Hey there, welcome to my studio. Today we're going to talk about procedural geometry in Unity. That is, how do we create 3D stuff, objects, without relying on what's created for us? How can we create it using code instead? So, I am in Unity, and I'm going to create an empty game object. This is going to be my geometry holder. And I'm going to need a couple of things attached to this. For components, I need a mesh renderer. This is going to make my mesh actually show up and get displayed. I'm going to need a mesh filter, and this is going to specify which mesh is going to be used by the mesh renderer. And then I'm going to have to make a script that I can attach here. Let me create a C# script. Let's call it procedural geometry. Why not? It's very generic, but you could find a better name. Alright, let me attach it there. And then let's go edit that script. So we need a mesh renderer, we need a mesh filter, and the mesh filter needs to have a specific mesh. Now the mesh is a collection of vertices, and you can think of vertices as the points, the corners of the 3D geometry. So we're going to be defining how it creates those points. I want to be sure and explicit in this script that we do require specific components. This object needs to have a mesh filter component, and it needs to have a mesh renderer component. Okay, so now I want to make a mesh. I'm going to keep it private because this mesh only really is meaningful for this script. I'm going to make a new mesh and assign it into that reference, and so I can use it later. And then I want to tell the mesh filter that I'm going to be using this mesh as the mesh to be rendered. So I need to get a reference to my mesh filter component, MF, sure, that's a great abbreviation, and I'll use get component mesh filter. There we go. Alright, MF. The mesh filter has a mesh property that we can assign into, and then we're good to go. Now I can start defining my geometry. I'll put this in a separate function. Let's call it like update mesh. Update mesh. There we go. Okay, so I want to just make a simple triangle. That should be a good start. When I look at my mesh object here, it has a whole bunch of properties and a lot of information it can tell us about itself. But we have to tell it first what vertices to use, what points in 3D space to use as the corners of our geometry. So what I want to use is this setVertices function, and it takes a list of vector 3s. So I'm going to make a list of vector 3s. Let me call this vertices. It needs to be a new list of vector 3s. And then that's what I'll pass into this function, vertices. Between these, I need to specify what those vertices are. So vertices.add and their new vector 3s. Let's add a single one. And I'm just going to make it a triangle. So I need 3 points. Let's say 0, 3, 0. Let's do like -3, 5, 0. We'll just keep it in the XY plane and maybe going up. Okay. So now while I know that these will form a triangle, Unity doesn't yet know that I intend to render a triangle with them. So I need to specify using set triangles. I need to specify a thing called indices. So just like when you're indexing into an array, say this vertices thing is kind of like an array. This first vertex is vertex 0. That's its index. Vertex 1 is the second one here, and vertex 2 is this last one. So 0, 1, and 2 are going to be the indices for my my vertices to refer to those. And this is really beneficial because you can specify vertices and you can reuse them by just referring to them by index, and you don't need to specify that data over and over again. It saves space. So mesh.setTriangles takes an array of integers like 0, 1, and 2 and a submesh number. So I'm just going to say indices, and I'm going to use 0 for the submesh. It really doesn't matter right now. Just one mesh. Alright, so indices, it's a new array of integers, and I'm going to specify them right here because they're simple enough. 0, 1, and 2 are going to form a triangle, and that's what I want to render. Okay, so let's go back into Unity and see how this goes. Okay. Oh, there we are. Okay, so it looks like I have some geometry rendering there. It's kind of high up in the air there. It's a triangle. It is bright pink because I did not tell it to have any particular material, and it is one-sided. You can see one-sided, and that's normal planar geometry. The interesting thing here is the Unity's graphics engine here has to decide what's the front face of this geometry. Why doesn't it face this way? And it does that based on something called the winding order. So just the order that I choose for my indices, this vertex, then that one, forms, what is it, 0, 3, it goes to the left and up, and then it goes to the right and up. So it's sort of this way around. This to me is counterclockwise, and that defines the forward face for this piece of geometry. If I go the other way around, clockwise, then it's going to be facing the other way. There we go. So if I get on the other side of it, now it's facing the other way. Okay, so that's it for this basic introduction to procedural geometry in Unity. In the next video, we're going to be applying a texture to this stuff. See you then.